The advertisement promised a serene getaway, a charming, rustic house tucked into the woods, complete with cozy furniture, a crackling fireplace, and endless quiet. For Megan and Liam, it seemed like the perfect retreat to heal their strained relationship. The host, Gerald, was polite but peculiar, greeting them at the door with an unsettlingly wide smile. His parting words lingered longer than they should have. The house takes care of its own. You'll see. Their first night seemed ordinary, but Megan woke at 2:14 a.m., startled by a faint sound. It wasn't the creak of an old house settling. It was deliberate, rhythmic, like someone tapping. When she glanced at the vent near the ceiling, she thought she saw a flicker of movement, just a shadow shifting in the corner of her eye. She shook Liam awake, but he only groaned, dismissing her fears with a tired, "It's your imagination, babe." The next morning, Megan noticed the mug she had left on the counter was now in the sink. She swore she hadn't moved it. Liam waved it off, laughing. Maybe the house is just trying to help clean up. But Megan wasn't laughing. The unsettling oddities escalated. Muffled whispers through the walls, private conversations played back to her from nowhere, and the creeping sensation that they were never truly alone. Was the house haunted, or was someone watching them? Then she found the journal, a forgotten relic left by a previous guest, filled with frantic entries about hearing her own voice when no one else was home, feeling fingers graze her shoulder in an empty room, and a name scrawled repeatedly across the pages. Gerald. As Megan read the last line in the journal, "Get out before it's too late," a voice came through the vent above her. It was her own voice, distorted and hollow, whispering, "Get out before it's too late." With her pulse racing, she turned to Liam, desperate to leave, but the front door was bolted shut from the outside. Gerald's voice echoed through the house, warm and welcoming, yet laced with menace. "Didn't I say the house takes care of its own? Let me show you what that really means." Megan and Liam arrived at the Airbnb late in the afternoon, the golden light of sunset filtering through the dense woods. The house stood quaint and welcoming, its peeling white paint and vine-covered walls adding to its rustic charm. As they stepped out of the car, they were greeted by Gerald, a wiry man in his 60s with an unsettlingly wide smile. He stood too close as he handed over the keys, his gaze flicking between them as though committing their faces to memory. "This place is special," Gerald said, lingering on the threshold as Megan and Liam unpacked their bags. "It has a way of getting to know its guests. Treat it well, and it'll treat you well." Megan offered a polite smile while Liam shrugged, already eager to settle in. Gerald finally left, but his words hung heavy in the air as they closed the door behind him. Their first evening passed uneventfully. The couple settled into the cozy living room, sipping wine by the fire. The tension that had clouded their relationship felt distant, the crackling flames and isolated woods offering a much-needed escape. But as night fell, the house seemed to come alive. Megan awoke in the middle of the night, her chest tight with unease. The room was silent, but something felt off. A faint sound, tap, 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 echoed from the wall near the vent. She stared at it, heart racing, sure she saw a shadow move behind the slats. She nudged Liam awake, whispering, "Do you hear that?" He groaned and rolled over. "It's an old house, Megan. Wood creaks. Go back to sleep." But she couldn't. The next morning, Megan felt groggy and irritable. Liam, ever the skeptic, brushed off her complaints about the strange noises, chalking it up to paranoia. "We've been stressed, Meg. You're overthinking everything." While Liam stepped out to explore the woods, Megan stayed behind, tidying the kitchen. That's when she noticed the mug she had left on the counter was now in the sink, dripping water, her brow furrowed. She hadn't moved it. Liam wasn't even home. Later, she found her necklace, the one she had left zipped in her suitcase, lying neatly on the bedside table. Her unease grew, but Liam laughed when she told him, teasing her for being spooked by a house. Still, Megan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. That night, as they lay in bed, the whispers started. Faint at first, like the hum of the wind, but soon they grew louder. Megan sat up abruptly, clutching the blanket. "Do you hear that now?" she hissed. Liam strained his ears but shook his head. "There's nothing there, Meg. Just the wind." The next day, the oddities intensified. Lights flickered and doors that were locked suddenly stood ajar. Megan's sense of being watched turned into certainty when she found her own voice playing through the house speakers, whispering things she had never said. Liam dismissed it as a malfunction, but Megan's hands shook as she unplugged every device in the house. That's when she found the journal, hidden under a loose floorboard in the bedroom. The pages were filled with frantic entries from a previous guest describing the same experiences. Whispers in the walls, objects moving on their own, and the terrifying sense of being watched. One name appeared over and over in the journal's frantic scrawl, Gerald. Megan froze as she read the final entry. "He's always there. He sees everything. Get out before it's too late." At that moment, she heard a voice through the vent above her. It was her own voice, distorted and hollow, whispering back the same words. "Get out before it's too late." She turned to Liam, her face pale. "We need to leave, now." But when they reached the front door, it wouldn't budge. The locks had been bolted from the outside. And then Gerald's voice echoed through the house, calm and soothing, but laced with menace. "You're not going anywhere. The house takes care of its own." Panic set in as Megan and Liam realized the front door wouldn't open. Megan tugged at the handle, her palms slick with sweat, while Liam rattled the doorframe in frustration. "What the hell is going on?" Liam muttered, his bravado cracking. A low chuckle echoed from the walls, followed by Gerald's voice, soft and mocking. "You should have respected the house. It doesn't like guests who snoop." Megan froze. "He's in the walls," she whispered, her voice trembling. The couple backed into the living room, their eyes darting around the space. Suddenly, the television flickered to life, showing grainy footage of them in various rooms of the house, laughing in the kitchen, sleeping in bed, and even Megan reading the journal just moments ago. Liam's face turned pale. "He's been watching us." The house seemed to pulse with life, creaks and groans reverberating around them. Liam grabbed the fireplace poker, his knuckles white as he turned to Megan. "We're getting out of here. If he's in the walls, there has to be an entrance." They started searching frantically, knocking on walls and pulling at loose floorboards. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow more menacing. Megan found herself flinching at the slightest noise, her breath coming in short gasps. The whispers began again, this time louder, more insistent. Megan pressed her hands over her ears, but the voices grew stronger. They weren't just whispers anymore. They were snippets of her own thoughts, private fears she'd never spoken aloud. "Liam doesn't believe you. You're always overreacting. You'll never get out." She stumbled back, clutching the journal to her chest. "It's not just him," she said, her voice breaking. "The house is doing this." Liam grabbed her arm, his voice firm. "Snap out of it, Megan. He's trying to mess with you. That's all this is, a sick game." But as they moved through the house, the psychological torment intensified. They found strange carved symbols hidden behind picture frames, and Megan swore she saw eyes staring back at her through the slats of a vent. At one point, a recording of Liam's voice played over the speakers, cold and accusing. "You're losing it, Megan. You're ruining everything." Desperation mounted as they discovered a hidden door in the pantry. Liam shoved it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading into darkness. The air was damp and musty, carrying the faint metallic scent of rust. "This has to be it," Liam said, his voice tinged with both hope and fear. Megan hesitated. "What if this is what he wants?" "We don't have a choice," Liam said. "We can't stay up here." They descended the stairs, the dim light from Liam's phone casting long, flickering shadows on the walls. The basement was a labyrinth of storage spaces and crawl spaces, the walls lined with peeling insulation. Megan felt like the house was closing in on her. Then they found it, a crude living space hidden behind the walls. There was a cot covered in tattered blankets, a makeshift table cluttered with tools, and monitors showing live feeds from cameras hidden all over the house. "Gerald's been living here," Megan said, her voice trembling. She pointed to a pile of notebooks on the table, each labeled with the names of previous guests. Flipping through one, she found detailed observations about their behavior, their conversations, even their secrets. Liam's face darkened. "This guy is insane." Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them, plunging the room into pitch blackness. Gerald's voice echoed from a hidden speaker. "I warned you to respect the house. You didn't listen." The lights flickered back on, revealing Gerald standing at the far end of the room, holding a long, serrated knife. His calm demeanor made him all the more terrifying. "This is my sanctuary," Gerald said, his eyes wild. "You came here to ruin it." Megan grabbed a heavy wrench from the table, her heart pounding. "We didn't come here for you. Just let us go." Gerald tilted his head, considering her words. Then he smiled. "But the house isn't done with you yet." Without warning, he lunged. Gerald's knife sliced through the air as Liam pushed Megan out of the way. The blade barely missed her, embedding itself into the wooden table behind her. Gerald's calm facade cracked, revealing the unhinged fury bubbling beneath his surface. Liam swung the fireplace poker at him, forcing Gerald to step back. "Run!" Liam shouted to Megan, his voice echoing in the cramped basement. Megan stumbled toward the far end of the room, searching frantically for another way out. She spotted a narrow opening leading into the crawl space behind the walls. Heart pounding, she squeezed through, the jagged edges of the opening scraping her arms. Behind her, she heard the sounds of struggle, Liam grunting, furniture crashing, Gerald's chilling laughter echoing in the confined space. "You can't escape the house," Gerald taunted. "It won't let you." Inside the crawl space, the air was suffocating, thick with dust and the stench of mildew. Megan crawled on her hands and knees, her palms scraping against exposed nails and debris. The surveillance wires snaked along the walls, and she followed them like a trail, hoping they would lead her to an exit. Suddenly, the speakers in the walls crackled to life, blasting a distorted recording of her own voice. "You always mess everything up, Megan. This is all your fault." Her breath quickened. The house wasn't just a prison. It was playing with her mind. Every creak of the wood, every flicker of the lights seemed designed to heighten her paranoia. She clutched the wrench tighter, her knuckles white. "Focus," she told herself. "It's just him. It has to be just him." The crawl space opened into another hidden room, a smaller, darker area filled with relics of Gerald's obsession. Old photographs of smiling guests were pinned to the walls, all defaced with angry scratches across their faces. One photo caught her eye. A couple standing in the living room of the house, their arms around each other. The man was Gerald, but younger, healthier, smiling. A journal sat open on a desk beneath the photo. The scrawled handwriting revealed Gerald's descent into madness. They ruined everything. They didn't respect the house. I have to protect it. A loud crash pulled her attention back to the basement. Megan crept back to the crawlspace entrance and peeked through a gap. She saw Liam pinned to the floor, Gerald looming over him with the knife raised high. "No!" Megan screamed, crawling out of the wall and running at Gerald. She swung the wrench with all her strength, hitting him squarely in the shoulder. He let out a guttural scream, dropping the knife and stumbling back. Liam scrambled to his feet, grabbing the fallen poker. Together, they faced Gerald, who was now panting, his wild eyes darting between them. "This isn't your house anymore, Gerald," Megan said, her voice firm despite the terror coursing through her. "It's over." But Gerald laughed, a low, guttural sound that sent chills down her spine. "You don't understand. The house chose me. It'll never let you leave." Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, plunging the basement into darkness. Gerald disappeared into the shadows, his laughter echoing around them. Megan and Liam pressed their backs against the wall, gripping their makeshift weapons tightly. "We need to get out of here," Liam whispered, his voice trembling. Megan scanned the room, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. She spotted a panel on the far wall with a faint glow, the main power switch. "That has to control the locks," she said. "We shut it off, and we can get out." As they crept toward the panel, Gerald's voice boomed through the speakers again, mocking and taunting them. "You think you can leave? The house won't let you go. It needs you now." A loud crash sounded behind them, and Gerald lunged from the shadows. Megan reacted instinctively, swinging the wrench. It connected with his head, and Gerald crumpled to the ground. Liam yanked the panel open and flipped the main switch. The lights in the house shut off entirely, and a distant click echoed through the space, the sound of the front door unlocking. "We need to move," Liam said, grabbing Megan's hand. Together, they sprinted up the stairs and through the house, the walls seeming to groan in protest, as if the house itself were alive. The front door was open, a sliver of moonlight spilling through. They burst out into the night, gasping for air, their hearts pounding. Behind them, the house seemed to sigh, its windows reflecting the eerie glow of the moon. For a moment, they thought they heard Gerald's voice again, faint and distant. "You'll be back. The house always calls them back." As they reached their car, Megan turned to Liam, her voice shaky but resolute. "We need to tell someone. No one else can stay here." Liam nodded, starting the engine. Not just about him, about the house. As they drove away, the house loomed in the rearview mirror, its dark silhouette against the starless sky. Though they had escaped, Megan couldn't shake the feeling that the house, and whatever lived within it, wasn't finished with them yet. Megan and Liam sped away from the house, but silence filled the car like a suffocating fog. Megan clutched her arms, trembling, replaying Gerald's final words in her mind. "The house always calls them back." Liam broke the silence. "We need to go to the police." "Do you think they'll believe us?" Megan asked, her voice cracking. "It's not just him, Liam. That house, it's alive. I felt it." Liam gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. "We tell them everything. Gerald's surveillance setup, the crawl spaces, his obsession. Even if they don't believe the rest, they can't ignore the evidence." The couple arrived at the police station just before dawn. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as they recounted their harrowing experience to the skeptical officers. Megan showed the scratches on her arms and handed over Gerald's journal, the photos of past tenants, and the description of the house's hidden passages. The officers exchanged doubtful glances, but when Megan described how Gerald had manipulated them with recorded voices and remote-controlled doors, one detective, Officer Parker, leaned forward. "If there's surveillance like you say, we can verify this." A team was dispatched to the property, and Megan and Liam waited anxiously in the station, watching the first rays of sunlight bleed through the windows. Time dragged as they sat in silence, broken only by the occasional murmur of an officer passing by. Hours later, Officer Parker returned, his face pale. "We found him," he said, sitting across from Megan and Liam. "Gerald was unconscious in the basement, exactly where you left him. He's in custody now." Liam exhaled, relief washing over him, but Parker's expression remained grim. "We also found his surveillance setup, just like you described, cameras everywhere, audio recordings, a journal of his methods, enough to keep him locked up for a long time." "So it's over?" Megan asked hesitantly. Parker hesitated. "We found the crawl spaces too, but the team felt something strange in there. It wasn't just about Gerald. Some officers swore they heard voices, whispers coming from the walls. The text played back some of the audio, but there was nothing on the tape." Megan's heart sank. "The house?" Parker's jaw tightened. "We'll be sealing the property and treating it as an active investigation site for now. But I've worked enough cases to know when something isn't normal." Megan and Liam returned home that evening, physically safe but emotionally rattled. They tried to resume their normal lives, but the shadows of their experience lingered. Megan woke up most nights, hearing faint whispers she couldn't explain. She began obsessively checking the walls, tapping them, convinced they weren't alone. One evening, Liam found Megan sitting in the dark, staring at a small trinket on their coffee table. It was the keychain she had found in the crawl space, an item that had belonged to one of Gerald's past victims. "We should have burned it," she whispered. "It's like it followed us." Liam took her hands in his, grounding her. "We're safe now, Megan. It's over." But even as he said the words, they both knew they didn't believe it. Weeks later, a news report caught their attention. A construction crew working to renovate the house had quit abruptly, refusing to return after reporting unexplainable incidents. Tools moved on their own. Eerie voices echoed through the walls, and several workers swore they felt unseen eyes watching them. The house had been abandoned again, boarded up, left to rot. But Megan couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't done with her. One night, as she stared out the window, she thought she saw a light flicker in the attic of their own home. A faint glow, just for a moment. She turned to call Liam, but when she looked back, it was gone. The story ends with Megan sitting in her living room, staring at the walls, the faint sound of static humming in the distance. The last image lingers on the house, dark and foreboding, with a single window flickering like a heartbeat. Whatever lived in that house hadn't let go, and it had found its next target,